Let's dig into this trade targets list a little bit more. We started today's show with the breaking news of Joel Edmondson going to Toronto. The Washington Capitals still have a couple of interesting pieces on the block. Max Pacioretty, who you see on the right side of the graphic, Nick Dowd on the left side. We had heard for a while that the Caps are looking for a first-round pick for Dowd. Do you think they're still going to be able to get that?
I'm torn. I mean, I think when you look at all that he brings and the 1 year left on his deal at 1.3 million, when I first had the Joel Edmondson trade to Toronto come across my plate, I was thinking, oh, could this be a spot where Edmondson and Dowd go to the same place? And Dowd would certainly be a fit for the Leafs to improve them now and then for the future. Obviously, that didn't happen. The teams that I've been talking to, they view the return for Dowd as either that late first in a singular way, or they're looking at it in you could get a second and a third. So that's sort of the range that teams have been thinking for Dowd. And again, because he has that term, no guarantee that he moves, but the fact that we've seen Edmondson and Mantha go, we know the Caps have thrown in the towel on this season. Max Pacioretty is very likely to go. Keep Florida in mind. We mentioned how they're still holding out hope on Gensel, as slim as that might be, but the next check down option, Pacioretty, is in a very similar type situation with the Caps that Vladimir Tarasenko was with the Sens. He holds all the cards, full no trade, full no move. And Pacioretty has, I believe, has Florida on his real short list of teams that he'd like to play for, like Tarasenko, has a house there, has family there, and certainly would be in a spot where the Caps, might not have to pay a whole lot if they're leveraging that situation properly to add a guy that is really just kind of getting going now, 15 points in 25 games coming off of the two ACL tears, or Achilles tears, excuse me.
Washington's already retained money on both Edmondson and Mantha, so they have one more retained salary spot. And you mentioned Pacioretty with that full no movement clause. They definitely have a lot of cards here to play on deadline day. Staying out east, Frank, let's go to New Jersey, where I know Tom Fitzgerald came out earlier in the week and said, I'm not shopping Tyler Toffoli. As the days have kind of gone on since that quote, it's starting to sound like he's more likely than not to move. Is that fair?
Sorry, who is that? I just have a trade that I'm working on here.
Ooh,
I've been working on it all show, and I can't concentrate.
Tyler Toffoli, pending UFA, $4 million AAV, having a great year, proven playoff guy. It is easy to see why contenders would love this guy. Is it more likely than not that New Jersey moves him?
Yes, I think very likely at this point. I would peg it at well north of 80%. Look, New Jersey recognizes the spot that they're in. I think LA with their cap machinations is one to watch. And I mentioned a couple of the teams where I don't think he's going. I don't think he could be wrong. Don't think he's going to Edmonton. Could be wrong. Don't think he's going to Colorado. So you begin to kind of work through the list of some of those other fits. If the New York Rangers don't get Jake Gensel, could Toffoli cross the Hudson River, as unholy as that might sound? Like, I think there's lots of different options on the table for New Jersey. I do think the Kings, though, are certainly one of the teams that would like to bring Toffoli back in after winning a Stanley Cup with him 10 years ago.
Yeah, it would be a really neat story as well. You and I have talked about a lot of chaos theories, Calgary having to play Dallas and Chris Tanev in round one of the playoffs.
Chaos.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Rangers, it's so unlikely. Rangers slip to 2. Devils jump over the Flyers. Toffoli's a Ranger. Round 1, rematch of last year. Again, highly, highly unlikely, but just let my mind wander for a little bit. A couple more names I want to run past you, Frank. You mentioned the LA Kings. They are the lone buyer out in California. The Anaheim Ducks, one of the two sellers, and they have Frank Vatrano, who's still in the top 10 of your trade targets board. Frank, he's got term on him, which makes him maybe not a check down per se for the teams interested in Toffoli, but a guy you could pivot to, goal scorer. And if you want to sacrifice assets to get a guy with term, man, Vatrano to help you for 2 playoff runs would be a great fit for a lot of contenders. What's the appetite in Anaheim to move on from him?
I don't think it's very high, but I think they also recognize that they're in a spot where Frank Vatrano at $3.65 million may be more valuable to other teams than to the Ducks. Now, if they traded Vetrano, the first thing you're going to do this summer is try and go out and find another one. So I don't think they're really pushing hard to do it, but I can tell you that teams are certainly calling, trying to make something happen. A reminder on Anaheim that they've now used all 3 of their retained salary transaction slots, so wouldn't be able to retain on any player. So some people were saying, oh, that killed the Rangers' interest in Vetrano. I don't think that's the case. I think the Rangers could still find a way to make it work if that were to be their target, but it just changes things from Anaheim's perspective.
One or a couple other players I want to hit on, Frank, as we continue our sort of gauntlet run here on the day before the trade deadline. Jacob Chychrun in the Ottawa Senators. We saw them move on from Tarasenko yesterday. I know some people or some Sens fans were upset with the price because Tarasenko basically got to pick his spot. They would get a lot for Jacob Chychrun. Do you think he moves at this deadline, or is this maybe more of a summer thing?
I don't know what I would handicap this at, because I know that the appetite for Chychrun 6 weeks ago was really strong. And I think teams have gone back and gone to the drawing board and said, well, if this is what rental price, like if this is the Hanifin price, how much more would we need to spend to get Chychrun? And then we have him next season at $4.6 million, which is obviously incredibly attractive. He's played a lot better in Ottawa than he did in Arizona, which teams have certainly paid attention to. But here's the thing. Ottawa's in a spot. They've got $16.05 million committed to Jake Sanderson and Thomas Chabot on the left side of their defense. As soon as July 1, Chychrun's eligible to sign an extension. So you'd be looking at somewhere between 22 and 24 million bucks just on the left side of your defense. That's going to be really hard to do. I personally, this is my own opinion, I think if you were to inject some truth serum into the Sens, they would say we'd rather move Chabot than Chychrun because they're just different players. But that term and the dollars remaining, the value just isn't the same as it is for Chychrun. I think it's still really likely that Chychrun next season is playing somewhere else. I just don't know if it happens before Friday or does it happen in the run up to the draft.
All right, last one. This we got a question in the inbox from Neil right before our show started. He wanted to know any surprise players you could see being dealt. Frank, I want to flip that into a question about a player who's lower down on your board. Linus Ullmark has popped into your top 50. We know the Bruins are short on assets. They're basically a team that would have to make hockey trades, it feels like. Ullmark on your list. Is there a realistic shot that the Bruins look to do something a little kooky here before tomorrow at 3:00?
Look, that's why he's at number 49. Never say never. I think it's really unlikely. But I do think a team like the Devils has been calling. I think the Devils have called on quite literally every goalie, even guys under longer term contract. Like I think they called Pittsburgh on Tristan Jarry, for instance. So look, goaltending has been the staple, the saving grace of the Bruins. It's a huge reason why they're as good this year as they were last year. Maybe not quite as good as a record-setting year, but have been damn near, perfect and consistent when it comes to their goaltending. Ullmark and Swayman obviously get along. Swayman does need a new deal. I think they've been hard at work on an extension for that. And if you're a team that doesn't have very many assets and is trying to trade to improve your roster elsewhere, Ullmark is one of those pieces that you have at your disposal that could do that in a year in which you don't have the first round pick. So that's more along the lines of the thought process. They're receiving calls and they want to improve their team. How do you find a way to make that happen? Maybe Ullmark is that candidate. I just think it's probably pretty unlikely.
All right, there you go. A fantastic edition of Icebreakers as we hit on a lot over a little 10-minute stretch there. And it's, as always, brought to you by DoorDash. 25% off, 0 delivery fees on your first order with the promo code NATION25. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.